I remember the taste of iron. It coated my tongue as the wind carried ash through the ruins of our city, and the sky bled the color of rust. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can still feel the grit between my teeth, the dust of the fallen, the remnants of walls that once bore the imperial aquila. Every breath was a prayer. Every heartbeat, a sin waiting to be measured that they told us the emperor was watching. They said his gaze could pierce the smoke, could find the worthy among the ruins. I was 15 standard years, then skin stretched thin over hunger, hands trembling from work and fear. Yet when the sky barges came, I stood among the crowd, head bowed, trying not to meet the eyes of the angels descending upon us. We called them angels of death, though their armor gleamed like sanctified thunder. The ground shook beneath their arrival, every servomotor and vox hymn blending into one mechanical psalm of judgment. Behind them came the servitors, pale and trembling with augmetic limbs, carrying banners of parchment and purity, seals that fluttered like wings of burning scripture. The air smelled of ozone and sanctity. Then came the voice, the proclamation. The emperor's call has come to this world. The faithful shall be measured. The worthy shall be taken. No one dared to speak. Some wept, others whispered blessings. And then the choosing began. They took us by number, not by name. Names had no worth in the gaze of divinity. We were herded into lines, each soul trembling as a robed lex mechanic passed a scanning wand over our skulls, muttering binary prayers to machine spirits. Some were rejected instantly. The wand hissed, a red rune flared, and the servitors dragged the chosen away. We never saw where. When it came to me, the wand paused. Its light burned gold. The lex mechanic turned his eyeless, augmetic face toward me, and through the static of his vox grill came one word: candidate. That night, I dreamt of fire. They gathered us in the plaza, hundreds of us, stripped of clothing, washed in recycled water that smelled faintly of chemicals and incense. Above, a chaplain's voice thundered from a voxcaster, distorted yet divine. He spoke of the emperor's mercy, of duty beyond flesh, of salvation through surrender. He called it ascension through service. But among us the phrase carried another name whispered with dread: the emperor's call. I did not understand then. I thought it an honor. We were led beneath the cathedral, the one building left standing amid the ruins. Its stones were blackened by centuries of worship and war. Servo skulls hovered in the corridors, their mechanical eyes scanning our faces as if searching for the spark of something unseen. I heard one whispering litanies in the voice of a dead man, perhaps a priest whose mind had been bound to its circuits long ago. The air grew colder the deeper we went. The hymns became more distant, and the light thinner, holier, crueler. They told us to kneel before an altar of chrome and bone. Upon it lay tools I did not recognize, blades shaped like relics, syringes that gleamed like sacred daggers, and scrolls of human parchment inked with prayers and blood. One by one, we were anointed with machine oil. The tech priests moved among us, their robes hissing with hidden servos, their faces obscured by rebreathers that exhaled sacred smoke. When they touched my forehead, I felt the cold bite of metal fingers and the hum of ancient circuitry. "Be still," one of them whispered. "The flesh is weak. The emperor will make it pure." That was the first time I felt the fear not of death, but of transformation. I remember wanting to run, to hide, to cling to the memory of who I was. But their words, those sanctified syllables, cut deeper than any blade. We were told that fear was blasphemy, that pain was penance, that obedience was worship. And so I knelt, and I whispered the creed they taught us. Through the pain of rebirth, I serve. Through the death of flesh, I ascend. Through the emperor's call, I am remade. We were marked then. They drove a needle into the base of my skull, a burn like liquid lightning coursing through my veins. My vision shattered into fragments of light and memory. I saw faces, faceless warriors wrapped in shadow, marching across endless stars. I saw planets burning in his name. I saw the galaxy itself bowing beneath a golden throne that never spoke, but always watched. When I awoke, I was in darkness. Chains held me in place, though I could not tell if they were real or inside my mind. I could hear others screaming, but their voices grew fainter as time passed. The air was thick with disinfectant and blood. Somewhere nearby, a servo skull drifted, humming a lullaby that sounded almost kind. And then silence. A voice broke it. Not human, not mechanical, something vast and holy between. The flesh resists. The soul must yield. I think it spoke inside me. I think it was me. I tried to speak, to ask what this was, but my mouth could not form words. I could only taste iron again. The scent of burned hair filled the air. Then the light came blinding, golden, merciless. I remember thinking, this must be what it feels like to die in his sight. But it was only the beginning. I awoke to the rhythm of machines breathing. Pistons rose and fell like lungs. Cables pulsed beneath the floor, carrying liquid fire through veins of steel. Somewhere above me, a choir of servo skulls sang in vox-distorted harmony, 1,000 mechanical voices reciting the catechism of purity. The words echoed through the chamber, bouncing off metal walls slick with condensation and the faint scent of oil and sanctified blood. I was no longer in the world of men. We were arranged in rows, each of us suspended by restraints that hummed softly with energy. Thin tubes burrowed into our flesh, feeding us sustenance that tasted like rust and incense. I could not tell how long we'd been there. Time did not exist in that place. There was only the sound of the machinery and the distant tolling of bells that might have been real or imagined. A tech priest stood before us, his robes parting like the wings of a rusted angel. His voice came through a vox-caster implanted in his chest, layered with static and reverence. Flesh is imperfection. The Emperor requires only that which endures. With a gesture, the servitors descended. Their hands were tools, their faces blank slabs of decayed humanity fused with augmetic faith. They moved from body to body, slicing, inserting, recording. Some of the candidates screamed. Others simply stopped. Each death was marked with a whisper, rejected. And the remains were carried away for recycling, sanctified by the rites of reclamation. When it was my turn, I tried to pray. But no words came. They began with the chest opening it, as though unveiling an altar. The air filled with smoke and antiseptic hymns. I felt my blood drain through tubes, replaced by something thicker, colder. I was told this was the blessing of iron, the first step toward becoming more than flesh. The pain you feel, the tech priest said, is the hymn of transformation. Listen to it, and be grateful. I tried. Emperor, help me, I tried. But all I could hear was screaming, mine or another's. I no longer knew. I drifted in and out of darkness. In some moments, I saw my body pale, stretched, adorned with sigils drawn in ash and blood. In others I saw visions, endless halls of steel cathedrals orbiting dead suns, rivers of data flowing like prayer, and the face of the Emperor carved in flame upon the inside of my skull. When I awoke again, I could move. Barely. We were given tasks, trials of obedience and endurance. The chaplains called it the walk of faith. We had to crawl through tunnels filled with blessed smoke and molten heat while reciting the catechisms of strength. Those who failed to finish were left behind, their names erased, their bodies repurposed into servitors. I saw one boy no older than me collapse halfway through. A tech priest marked his forehead with a sigil of reclamation, and a servo arm pierced his skull. No one looked back. Each day, I felt less of myself. The pain dulled. The fear quieted. Perhaps that was faith taking root, or perhaps it was the slow death of what I had been. In the evenings, We were allowed to stand before the image of the Emperor, a colossal statue half buried in the earth, its eyes glowing faintly with the power of ancient machines. We knelt, our bodies trembling, and listened to the chaplain's sermons. "You are clay upon the wheel of divinity," he said. "Through agony you are shaped. Through obedience you are remade. When the Emperor's call is complete, your name will no longer be your own. You shall be his will-given form." Some whispered prayers. Others wept silently. I only watched. Because sometimes, when the light struck the statue just so, I swore I could see it breathing. On the 7th night, I dreamed again. I stood in a vast chamber where stars hung like candles. Before me was a throne of bone and metal, and upon it sat a figure wrapped in golden fire. Its face was not a face, it was every face, every soul, every whisper of devotion across the Imperium. I tried to kneel, but my legs would not move. I could only listen. "You are not chosen," the voice said. "You are taken." I woke with blood running from my nose and the taste of ashes in my mouth. From that day on, they no longer called us candidates. We were initiates. The distinction felt hollow, but in their eyes, it meant something sacred. We were permitted to walk among the deeper sanctums, now endless corridors, lined with reliquaries, cryo-chambers, and vats filled with embryonic organs suspended in nutrient gel. The tech priests moved among them, like worshippers tending to shrines. It was then that I learned of the gene rite. We were to receive the seed of the primarcha, fragment of divine flesh passed down through millennia. They told us it was holy. They told us it would make us angels. But I had seen the vats where the organs grew, the machines that harvested them, the failed bodies floating like offerings in formaldehyde. I began to understand what the Emperor's call truly meant. It was not a voice. It was a summons to surrender body, soul, and self, to a purpose vast and merciless. To become not a man, but a vessel of obedience. Still, I went willingly. Because by then, the fear had become faith. When they cut me open for the gene rite, I did not resist. I watched the tech priest's automatic hands work in silence, watched my own blood drip onto the sanctified floor, watched the servo skulls record every moment with cold precision. The pain was immense, but behind it, I felt something. A presence. A whisper. "Endure," it said. "You are becoming." For days after, I burned with fever. My veins felt alive, crawling with holy fire. The others around me writhed, some tearing at their own flesh, some screaming praises until their throats bled. And when the fever broke, I rose. My reflection was not my own. My eyes shone faintly with light. My scars had closed into runes. My heartbeat sounded like a drum of war. I was told I had survived the first stage. Many had not. The chaplain came to me then, his skull-faced helm haloed in red lumen light. He placed a gaunted hand on my shoulder and spoke softly. "Do not mistake survival for salvation, child. The Emperor's call has only begun." And behind him, I saw the next chamber open, filled with machines that hummed like a choir of dying angels, and tables lined with the tools of rebirth. I walked toward them, because that is what faith demanded. They said I slept for 9 days. I do not remember sleeping. I remember voices. They murmured within the marrow of my bones, a choir woven from data streams and memories not my own. I saw fragments, battlefields drenched in acid rain, titans striding across horizons of flame, worlds dying in the Emperor's name. Sometimes I felt myself among them, standing where another once stood. I could feel his rage, his glory, his devotion. It bled into me like ink into water. They told us this was the memory induction. I did not dream. I inherited. When I opened my eyes, I was in a chamber lit by soft gold lumen strips. The air was thick with the scent of oil and sterilized flesh. Around me, others stirred, initiates like myself, but changed. Their eyes gleamed faintly in the dark. Their breathing was measured, mechanical. I realized my own heartbeat had slowed to a rhythmic pulse, synchronized with the machine that hummed beside my bed. A tech priest approached, his movements smooth and reverent. "You have been accepted by the gene," he intoned. "The Primarch's blessing lives within you. Now your mind must be broken and rebuilt." We were led barefoot, half-conscious into the hall of reflection. Imagine a cathedral made of mirrored steel, every surface alive with flickering runes and hololithic visions. The air vibrated with whispered prayers encoded into the very light. Each reflection was wrong, twisted, multiplied, stripped of humanity. I saw myself as I once was, small, frail, afraid. Then I saw myself as they wished me to be, an armored colossus, faceless, eternal. Between those images, something began to die. We were told to kneel before the altar of cognition, a massive construct of copper veins and neural cables descending from the ceiling like divine serpents. A chaplain and a Magos biologist stood before it. Together, they began the litany of unity. Flesh and thought are separate. Flesh and thought must be one. Flesh shall serve the Emperor. Thought shall obey his will. At their command, the cables descended, piercing the base of our skulls. Pain blossomed through my body white, total, all-consuming. It was not the pain of flesh. It was the pain of identity unmaking itself. Images flooded in, marching legions, firing drills, the roar of bolters and the hymns of extermination. I could feel their discipline forcing its way into my brain, overriding hesitation, erasing mercy. My past, my mother's face, my name, the ruins of my city faded like old scripture burned clean. "Forget," the voice commanded. "Forget and serve." I tried to hold on to something, anything, but the machine took it all. I was reduced to instinct, to obedience, to faith without question. When the process ended, I was shaking. My mouth bled from biting through my tongue. The chaplain's voice thundered through the chamber, echoing like prophecy. "You are no longer a man. You are the Emperor's instrument. His voice shall speak through your fury." And the congregation of newly reborn souls chanted as one. Through the Emperor's call, we become his wrath. From that day, we were drilled without rest. We learned the art of killing as liturgy, of weaponry as prayer. The instructors were giants, veterans clad in ceramite, faces scarred and holy. They watched us not with pity, but with the solemnity one might show an altar. When they spoke, every word was scripture. They taught us to disassemble our own humanity, piece by piece. Hunger was a heresy. Fatigue, a test of devotion. Mercy, a sin of weakness. Each scar was a blessing, each drop of blood a tithe. One night, after a session of live fire training, I found myself standing before the reliquary of Saint Aurelian, the first of our chapter. His skull was encased in gold, wires and sensors trailing from its sockets. A servo skull hovered near, recording our prayers. I asked it quietly, "Did it hurt? When you became what you are?" It turned toward me, Vox grill crackling with static. Then, in a voice that was not mechanical but hauntingly human, it whispered, "It still hurts. But pain is the Emperor's language." I understood then that the Emperor's call was not a single moment, nor a ceremony. It was endless. A voice that never ceased demanding more. Days bled into weeks. Weeks into something else. Our bodies changed faster than our minds could follow. Subdermal plating. Enhanced muscles. The secondary heart thrummed like an engine. Each organ implanted carried a ritual, each stitch a verse of praise. One of us, brother aspirant, Chiron, did not survive the Becher's gland implantation. His body convulsed, rejecting the sacred flesh. As he died, the chaplain made us watch. "This is what it means to be chosen," he said. "To offer oneself entirely. Even failure is a form of worship." They recycled his remains into nutrient slurry and fed it to us the next day. We drank in silence, After that, I stopped trying to remember my name. They began calling us neophytes. And the final test was whispered through the halls, the trial of the tomb. I did not know what it meant, only that it awaited those who had survived the flesh and mind. It was said to be the Emperor's direct gaze upon the soul, the moment when he decided whether one's spirit could bear the weight of divine war. Before the trial, we were allowed to confess. A Tet priest recorded our words, each syllable encoded in the holy databanks of the chapter. When it was my turn, I said only this: I no longer know who I am, but I believe. The priest nodded, and his augmetic hand inscribed the symbol of the Aquila upon my chest in sanctified oil. Then you are ready, he said. That night I dreamt of the sky opening like a wound. A golden light spilled forth, and within it, the faint outline of the Emperor's throne. And a whisper gentle, infinite spoke from beyond the veil. The call is not to ascend. It is to surrender. I awoke with tears I could not explain. Not sorrow. Not joy. Just the hollow peace of someone who has nothing left to lose. We were led to the elevator shrine. The next morning, a vast platform adorned with candles and purity seals. Descending into the bowels of the fortress monastery. The air grew colder, heavier. The chanting faded until only silence remained. Someone asked the chaplain where we were going. He replied without turning, into the heart of the machine. To meet your maker and your end. And as the lift sank into the dark, I realized the truth. The Emperor's call was not a message we received. It was a summons we could never refuse, that had begun the moment I was born under his light. It would not end until every part of me, flesh, thought, and soul, belonged to him entirely. The descent lasted an eternity. The elevator groaned beneath us, ancient gears screaming hymns of strain. The walls trembled as though the very mountain disapproved of what we were about to do. A faint mist rose from the vents, cold, sterile, metallic. It smelled of old blood and sacred oil. I could taste electricity in the air, sharp and pure like communion wine. Distilled from lightning. No one spoke. Speech felt sacrilegious here. At last, the platform stopped. The gates parted with a sigh like dying breath. Beyond lay a corridor of black stone carved with reliefs of angels and skulls, their eyes set with dull red gems that pulsed in time with some hidden heartbeat. Every step we took echoed forever. I counted them, as if numbers might keep me sane. After the 33rd, I stopped counting. The corridor opened into a vast chamber lit by vertical pillars of light. They rose from the floor to vanish into darkness above, humming like the throats of imprisoned gods. Around each beam stood figures, motionless, colossal, armored in gold. Statues, I thought at first. But as we drew near, I saw the condensation of breath within their helmets. They were the dead. Or perhaps the not yet dead. Entombed brothers, their lives preserved within sarcophagi of metal and prayer. One by one, their eyes flickered open. The chaplain raised his crozius, its head glowing with righteous flame. Kneel before the tomb. Here begins the true calling. We obeyed. The floor beneath us shifted, circular runes igniting with crimson light. The machine spirits stirred, their hum growing into a mechanical chorus. Above, servitors descended from the ceiling, fleshless, pale, held aloft by cables like puppets of faith. Each carried a relic, a blade, a syringe, a chalice. The tomb does not judge, the chaplain said. It remakes. They stripped us bare again. Cold air kissed skin that was more scar than flesh. A Tet priest stepped forward, his mechadendrites weaving through the air with surgical grace. He gestured, and we were bound by restraining arms of steel, spread like offerings upon altars of iron. The rites began. The first incision was not with steel but with light. A beam sliced open my chest. Smoke curled upward, perfumed with sanctified incense. I felt no pain, only a deep vibration in the soul, as if my essence were being untuned. They inserted cables into my open body, connecting me to the pillar of light. My vision fractured into 1,000 shards of gold and shadow. "You will see the Emperor," said the tech priest. "You will behold him in truth." And then I did. Through the burning veil of my own nerves, I saw him, not the statue, not the symbol, but the radiance that lay behind all things. A throne of light stretching beyond the galaxy, and upon it a shape too vast to comprehend. Around him, millions of souls screamed their praise, feeding the inferno of his will. Their agony was devotion, their death, eternal fuel. I understood then. The Emperor's call was not mercy. It was the gravity of his existence, pulling all toward him to be consumed and made useful. The chaplain's voice came through the haze. "He calls not because he loves you. He calls because you are his material." The cables dug deeper. My heartbeat became one with the pulse of the machine. I could feel others dying beside me, their minds collapsing under the pressure of revelation. Those who faltered were severed instantly, their bodies dropping like empty shells to the floor. I prayed to fail, but the machine would not let me. It wanted me alive. Hours passed, or perhaps centuries. My body no longer belonged to time. When the light dimmed, I was released. My skin smoked. My veins glowed faintly beneath the surface, etched with sacred circuitry. Every breath hurt, but the pain felt like worship. I was helped to my feet by a servo-construct, its touch gentle, almost human. It whispered in binaric tones, half code, half blessing. "You are bound. You are chosen. The machine knows you." We were led deeper still, into the ossuary of ascension. This chamber was smaller, more intimate. The walls were lined with bones, real bones, thousands of them, polished to ivory and inlaid with gold. Each bore a name, an oath, and a date of death. The air shimmered faintly, thick with incense smoke that smelled of myrrh and old circuitry. There we met the apothecary. His armor was white as frost, his eyes cold lenses that saw everything and pitied nothing. "Kneel," he said. "The final implants await. The tomb of flesh must be sealed." We obeyed again. The black carapace, the final bridge between man and armor, was prepared before us. A sheet of dark organic metal pulsating like a living thing. It was laid across my chest, and I felt it move, crawl, burrowing into the wounds they had made. It fused with me, merging bone with circuitry, nerve with fiber. I screamed silently as the apothecary recited the benediction of binding. "From this day, the machine is your brother. The armor, your blood. The Emperor, your soul." When it was done, the pain ceased as suddenly as it had begun. In its place came silence, a terrible, infinite calm. I realized I could feel the machine's thoughts. It was not language, but awareness, devotion made into pulse and rhythm. It knew me, and I knew it. The chaplain approached, his skull helm gleaming in the red light. "You have died," he said softly. "You have been remade. Now the Emperor may speak through you without distortion." I wanted to ask, "What am I now?" But no voice came. Words were useless. I understood him perfectly without sound. We were given new names then. Not the names of our birth, but titles forged in obedience, temporary, until our deeds earned us permanence. Mine was Candidate Lumen, a cruel irony. For the light had burned everything I was. Before we left, the chaplain ordered us to look once more upon the chamber of the tomb. I turned back, and saw what I had missed before. The walls were alive. Thousands of faces, those who had not survived the calling, pressed faintly against the translucent panels, preserved in fluid, their expressions locked between agony and peace. Their eyes still moved, tracking us. "They are with him now," said the chaplain. "Their failure feeds your strength." We bowed, the doors opened, and we stepped into a corridor bathed in cold blue light. Above the archway, words were carved in Gothic script. "He who dies in his service is immortal. He who lives for himself is already dead." We walked forward in silence. None of us looked back, Somewhere deep inside, I knew the truth. The boy I had been, the frightened, hungry soul who once stared at angels descending from the ash-filled sky, was gone. What walked now was something else. Something vast. Something hollowed out, and yet I felt peace. Because for the first time, I understood the Emperor's call completely. It was not a call to become something. It was a call to end, perfectly, usefully, beautifully. To be devoured by purpose and reborn as his instrument. The first sound I heard after awakening was the rhythm of my heart's two drums, beating in perfect unison, echoing through my skull like distant thunder. Each pulse carried weight, each breath a vibration that trembled through the bones of the fortress. For a moment, I thought I was hearing the voice of the machine again, but no. It was me. I was the machine now. When I opened my eyes, the world had changed. Every color was sharper, every sound painfully clear. I could hear the hum of power lines deep within the walls, the faint ticking of servo skulls gliding overhead, the whisper of prayers carved into the stone. My vision marked details my mind struggled to name: thermal traces, energy fluctuations, microfractures in the floor. The Magos biologists had told us this would happen, our senses reborn into instruments of war. But no sermon had prepared me for the terror of such clarity. The chaplain greeted us in the Hall of Silence, where statues of saints lined the walls, their faces eroded by centuries of incense smoke. He moved among us like a spirit in black armor, Crozius clutched like a relic of apocalypse. "You breathe as a weapon now," he said. "You think as one mind among thousands. The Emperor speaks within you, though you are not yet ready to understand his voice." Behind him, I saw the others, my brothers, kneeling in silent formation. None spoke. None moved. I felt them before I recognized them, their presence humming faintly within my consciousness, a shared rhythm connecting us all like strands of a web. Their thoughts brushed against mine, wordless, immense. It was not speech but communion. It was the choir of the faithful. The chaplain extended his hand toward us. "Rise, sons of the tomb. You have been forged in agony. Now you will learn to serve in unity." We obeyed. The act of standing felt monumental, as if the ground resisted, testing the worth of each step. My new muscles flexed like cables. My bones felt like iron. They led us to the Chamber of Echoes. It was a dome of obsidian, illuminated only by the slow spin of a holosun above. The walls were etched with sigils of the Primarch, and from the ceiling hung chains ending in hooks, banners, and relics of long-forgotten crusades. A low, droning hum filled the chamber, the resonance of psychic engines. We were told to kneel in a circle. At the center stood the librarian, hooded, robed in deep blue, his armor alive with runes of gold. His face was hidden, but his eyes shone through the shadow like twin stars reflected in still water. "You will hear the Emperor's call," he said. Not as a voice of command, but as the memory of light. He lifted his staff. The runes on its length ignited, and the world dissolved. I was no longer in the chamber. I stood instead upon a field of endless dust, beneath a sky of molten gold. In the distance, colossal figures moved through the haze, armored giants, their banners whispering the names of gods. I knew them. I was them. Their memories coursed through my veins. Their pain became my own. The librarian's voice echoed across the desolation. Every Astartes carries the shadow of his gene father. Through him, the Emperor's will flows. You must face the echo within the fragment that judges you worthy of his purpose. A shape rose before me, taller, brighter, wrapped in flame. It bore my face, but older, harder, infinite. Its eyes burned with the cold fire of suns, extinguished in devotion. "Do you know what you are?" it asked. "A weapon," I whispered. "A tool?" it demanded. "A vessel," I said. "His vessel, then prove it." It raised its blade, wreathed in the light of eternity. Instinct moved me. I raised my hand, and from the void, my own weapon appeared, a sword forged of thought and will. The duel began without sound. Each strike felt like the collapse of stars, each parry like the birth of galaxies. There was no victory, only understanding. Each wound I took filled not with pain but with revelation. Each cut whispered the same truth. The call does not end in death. It continues through the living, forever echoing in the blood. When I drove my blade through my echo's chest, it smiled. And the world returned. I was kneeling again in the chamber of echoes. My brothers were still beside me, trembling. Some wept openly, their tears falling onto the sacred stone. The librarian lowered his staff, his voice resonant and calm. You have heard the call. You have become its vessel. From this moment forth, you are brothers in the Emperor's dream. The chaplain stepped forward, placing his crozius against my brow. The metal burned faintly, sealing the final rite. Your flesh is no longer your own. Your will is the Emperor's weapon. Rise, brother of the chapter. The words struck me like lightning. I rose. The chamber erupted in the sound of hundreds rising together, steel feet striking the ground in perfect harmony. For the first time, I felt what unity truly meant. Not companionship, not love, but purpose shared so completely that individuality became heresy. We were not many. We were one. Afterward, we were led to the Hall of Armament. Rows of power armor stood upon racks, silent and waiting. The black carapace within me pulsed as we approached, responding like a child recognizing its parent. When I stepped closer, the armor moved, tiny servos whirring, joints flexing, a low hum of approval. A tech marine supervised, muttering binaric prayers as he guided me into the suit. The first contact was electric. My nervous system lit up, thousands of connections flaring at once. The armor responded to my thoughts, my heartbeat, my fear. The sensation was overwhelming, like wearing a cathedral that breathed with me. Accept it, the tech marine murmured. The spirit knows you now. Feed it faith. And I did. The helmet sealed with a hiss. The world changed again. My vision filled with data, the flow of oxygen, the status of ammunition, targeting metrics. But behind it all, like a heartbeat beneath the machine, I could still hear him, the Emperor. Not speaking, simply existing. The silence of his presence louder than any word. We stood assembled, a line of neophytes reborn in steel and faith. The chaplain's voice thundered across the hall. You have been reforged in his image. But the path is not complete. You must serve. You must kill in his name. Only through battle will the call find its answer. I remember the first step I took in that armor. The weight was colossal, yet it felt natural, like it had always been there, waiting for me. I looked down at my gauntlets and felt awe and fear in equal measure. This was the end of one life and the beginning of another. I was no longer human. I was something else, something eternal and terrible. That night, I stood before the statue of the Emperor again, now towering above me rather than over me. The light from the lumen strips flickered across his face, and I whispered, "Was this your mercy?" There was no answer. Only the hum of machinery, and the endless rhythm of my twin hearts singing the hymn of obedience. And though I did not smile, I knew peace. Because the call was not something to understand. It was something to become. They brought us to the surface before dawn. The air was heavy with the taste of ash and ozone, the sky a bruise of iron clouds above the fortress walls. Around us, banners of the chapter fluttered in the cold, wind-tattered relics from 1,000 wars. Each one bore the name of a world long forgotten, a prayer etched in blood and smoke. The chaplain walked before us, black armor glistening with sanctified oil, crozius held high. His voice carried through the ranks like the tolling of a great iron bell. Your bodies have been remade, your souls purified. But faith must be tested in fire. This is the final trial, the field of cinders. You will go unarmed. You will return only if the Emperor wills it. The gates opened with a roar of servos and steam. Beyond them lay a wasteland of jagged glass and scorched earth, a training ground carved from the remnants of war. The air shimmered with radiation, the ground still bearing the bones of fallen aspirants. We marched forward in silence. A dozen of us, each armored and barehanded. Each bound by the same vow, to kill or die in the Emperor's name. The moment the gates closed behind us, the world fell still. Then the howling began. Shapes emerged from the haze automata fashioned by the Tech Marines, mockeries of flesh and steel. Some bore claws, others held blades fused to their arms. Their eyes glowed red with the machine spirit's malice. They came at us in a storm of shrieking metal and dust. My training surged within me. Instinct, strength, precision, everything the gene seed had given me bloomed in that instant. I tore the first automaton apart with my hands, ripping its chest open as sparks poured over my armor. My brothers fought beside me, each one a storm of disciplined violence, but the field was not meant to be survived. It was meant to transform. The machines grew stronger with each wave. Some emitted bursts of blinding light, others held psychic interference that made our helmets scream with static. One of the neophytes, Brother Lucan, was torn apart by a tri-bladed construct before I could reach him. His death cry was a prayer. The Emperor knows me. When I crushed the automaton's head, I felt his voice echo through the bond between us, briefly, then gone. The loss was not sorrow. It was absorption. His death became part of the call, adding its note to the endless hymn within me. I fought until I could no longer tell where my body ended and the armor began. Blood mine or the enemy's coated the black ceramite. My gauntlets smoked with friction burns. My breathing was thunder. When the last of the constructs fell, silence returned. Only 6 of us remained. The sky darkened. From the far side of the field, a new figure approached, towering, ancient, wreathed in golden light. A dreadnought. Its steps shook the ground. Its voice, when it spoke, came through vox distortion like the voice of a dying god. You have shed weakness, but strength without submission is heresy. The machine raised its arm, and from its sarcophagus emerged the faint glimmer of a human face, shriveled, pale, eyes closed in eternal prayer. I knew then that it was no machine. It was a brother entombed in steel, mind bound to the Emperor's will. A relic of pain made holy. You will learn obedience, it said, or you will join me in the tomb. The chaplain's voice echoed through our vox links. Face it. Strike not to kill, but to understand. We obeyed. The dreadnought came upon us like a storm. Its fist crashed into the ground, sending shards of glass and rock into the air. I rolled aside, my armor shrieking in protest. One of my brothers charged and was caught mid-stride. The blow shattered his chestplate, leaving only silence where his heartbeat had been. I moved without thought. I struck with everything the Emperor had given me, every gene-forged muscle, every ounce of fury sanctified by pain. I leapt upon the dreadnought's back, driving my armored fists into its joints, tearing at its cables. Sparks flew, hydraulic fluid spattered my visor like blood. The machine turned, seizing me by the arm. The pressure was unbearable, bones snapping, servos screaming. It lifted me toward its face, the ancient occupant's withered eyes opening slowly. Do you see what you will become? It whispered. For the first time, I understood the truth of the call. It was not a summons to glory. It was an invitation to eternity, to serve beyond flesh, beyond reason, beyond death itself. The Emperor's call was not to live for him, but to never die. With the last of my strength, I drove my broken arm into the dreadnought's chest, tearing through the cables that bound the sarcophagus. The machine fell back, collapsing into the dust with a sound like a cathedral breaking. I stood above it, trembling. I understand, I said. The chaplain's voice came again, calm and thunderous. Then rise, Astartes, you are chosen. I fell to one knee, blood leaking from the seams of my armor. Around me, the surviving brothers knelt as well. The sky opened, rain falling for the first time in decades, a metallic rain that hissed against our armor, cleansing it of ash and oil. The dreadnought's eyes dimmed, but its voice lingered in the vox net. Serve well, brothers, the tomb awaits us all. When we returned to the fortress, the gates opened in silence. The air inside was cool, perfumed with incense and machine oil. Servo skulls hovered above us, trailing ribbons of parchment covered in prayers. As I passed beneath them, one descended, pressing a seal of wax onto my pauldron, the mark of the chapter. The chaplain stood before me, his skull helm reflecting the lumen light. Your blood has spoken, he said. Your mind has heard. Now only your soul remains to be tested. I bowed my head. How is that done, Father? He smiled beneath his mask. By never questioning again. That night I could not sleep. My twin hearts still thundered, and the call no longer whispered, it sang. It sang of war across the stars, of mankind's endless suffering and unending faith. It sang of duty so vast that no death could silence it. I felt it inside every breath, every pulse. It was not peace, but purpose, and purpose was enough. I went to the chapel once more. The golden effigy of the Emperor looked down upon me, and for the first time I did not feel small. I am yours, I said, forever. And from somewhere, deep within the stone and circuitry of the fortress, I heard an answer, soft, electric, eternal. You always were. The stars were cold and sharp as glass when we ascended. The Thunderhawk shuddered as it left atmosphere, engines screaming against the weight of gravity and sin. Below us, the fortress monastery shrank to a speck on a dying world. Ahead lay the void, vast, silent, sacred dot. It was my first journey through the void as one of the Emperor's angels. I had imagined the stars would bring comfort, but they were as merciless as any battlefield. Out there, nothing truly lived. Everything endured. The chaplain walked among us as we sat in silence, his crozius resting across his knees. The ship's lumen flickered in rhythm with our hearts. Each flicker seemed to pulse with the same thought, the same wordless unity that had haunted my dreams since the trial. The call dot, it no longer spoke as it once had. It resonated, like a chord struck across every soul aboard. Every heartbeat, every breath, every prayer synchronized into a harmony of devotion and machinery. Dot. We were no longer individuals. We were the chapters will made manifest. Dot. Through my Vox link, I heard the voices of my brothers, low and fervent, reciting the canticle of battle. Through fire we are remade. Through steel we endure. Through faith we ascend. The Thunderhawk docked within the hangar of a strike cruiser, his eternal wrath, an ancient leviathan of adamantium and sanctified circuitry. As I stepped onto its deck, the ship's spirit greeted us with a low chime, followed by a hiss of incense from hidden vents. A tech marine approached, bowed slightly, and began the liturgy of welcome. The spirit of this vessel is old, but faithful. Honor it as you would honor your own flesh. I touched the wall with my gauntlet and felt it breathe, faint vibrations, like a living pulse beneath the metal. The machine spirit responded, whispering in static. It was not language but recognition. It knew us. It knew what we were for. Our mission was simple. They said, to cleanse a heretic enclave on a moon named Sanctus Virel. But there is no simplicity in war. Only layers of faith, blood, and silence. We assembled in the arming chamber, where servitors moved among us, checking seals and reciting binary hymns. My armor hummed with readiness, machine spirit eager for purpose. I felt the call again, louder now, as if the ship itself was singing with us. When the assault began, there was no time to think. The drop pods screamed through the void, tearing into atmosphere. Fire streaked across the viewport. The world below was black rock and shattered spires, lit by the glow of orbital bombardment. My pods slammed into the surface, Doors blasting open with a roar of sacred hydraulics. We emerged into chaos. Bolter fire split the air. Heretics screamed prayers to false gods as their bodies erupted under mass reactive shells. My brothers moved as one, coordinated by instinct, by faith, by the invisible thread that connected us all, the call's rhythm guiding every motion. I remember my first kill. A heretic priest, wrapped in barbed wire and painted in filth, raised a torch of burning tallow toward me. I heard him shout blasphemies, though my Vox filters dulled his words. I fired once. The bolt round struck his chest and turned him into a cloud of ash and flame. For a moment, I expected guilt. Instead, I felt grace. His death was a hymn, perfectly timed, perfectly tuned. The call rose in volume, as though absorbing his end into its chorus. Each kill thereafter was a note, each death an offering. The battlefield became a symphony of faith and destruction. Our sergeant's voice thundered over the Vox. Press forward! The Emperor's gaze is upon us. We advanced through the ruins. Cathedrals half collapsed, altars defiled, icons defaced. Every corner reeked of rot and incense. The heretics had once been imperial, their temples still bearing the sigils of the Aquila. Their fall made their corruption all the more wretched. Inside one desecrated chapel, we found the remains of a choir, hundreds of corpses wired together by tubes and cables, their faces frozen in silent agony. From their open mouths, low tones still emanated, mechanical, continuous. A perverted mockery of the call. Brother Sergeant Malkian raised his weapon. Silence them, he said. We obeyed. One by one, the bolter fire ended the false song. When the last corpse fell quiet, I realized my own heartbeats matched the rhythm of their final moan. The call had absorbed even that, not rejecting, but purifying it. We pressed onward, deeper into the moon's catacombs, where the air grew heavy with dust and whispers. I could feel the presence of something vast, something alive beneath the stone. The call pulsed stronger. My visor flickered with static. Voices overlapped, not just my brothers, but thousands more, ancient and divine. Then I understood. The call was not born from us. We were born from it. It had always existed, a current of thought stretching across the Imperium, carried in every soul loyal to the throne. We were not merely soldiers. We were neurons in a cosmic mind, the Emperor's living dream, the manifestation of his will. When I realized this, I did not fear. I felt pride. Because to be part of that thought, to be even a fragment of his consciousness, was the greatest honor imaginable. We reached the core of the heretic stronghold, a vast chamber carved into the rock, filled with pulsating machinery and blasphemous icons. At its center stood a creature, once human, now swollen with warp corruption. Veins glowing with false divinity. It spoke. Though not with words, its voice entered my mind like a scream inside a cathedral. You are not free. You are his slaves. You call it faith, but it is the death of your souls. The world trembled. I fell to one knee, pain writhing behind my eyes. For a moment, I saw flashes, billions of human lives across 1,000 worlds, all kneeling, all praying, all identical. The call echoed through them, not as salvation, but as control. For one heartbeat, I doubted. And in that instant, the creature smiled. Then the chaplain's voice roared through the Vox. Doubt is heresy. Doubt is death. Faith surged back into me like fire. I rose, bolter roaring. The heretic's form disintegrated under the fury of the Emperor's will. Its final scream was consumed by the call, absorbed and silenced. When the battle ended, there was no triumph, only stillness. The call hummed softly in my skull, no longer a song, but a breath. It moved through every brother, every corpse, every machine. It was the Emperor inhaling through the lungs of all creation. I knelt amid the ashes, bolter resting against my chest. Was that victory? I asked the silence. A whisper answered, calm, resonant, endless. There is no victory. There is only service. And in that truth, I found peace again. The stars burn differently now. Once, they were distant suns, reminders of worlds waiting to be saved or purged. Now they seem like eyes, unblinking, watching in judgment or mercy. I can no longer tell which. We have returned from countless crusades. Decades, perhaps centuries, have passed since my initiation. Time has become an abstraction, a thread that frays the longer I serve. I no longer recall my homeworld's name. I no longer recall my human face. All that remains is the armor, the weapon, and the call. It has grown louder. At first, it was a whisper. Then, a voice. Then, a chorus. Now it is everything. When I walk the corridors of the strike cruiser, the walls hum with its rhythm. The deck plates tremble in tune with my hearts. Even the stars outside seem to flicker in its cadence. It has become impossible to tell where I end and the Emperor begins. We are one machine. One soul, one endless prayer. They say that when a space marine grows old, his mind begins to fray beneath the weight of duty, that too much faith, too much silence, can hollow a man until only obedience remains. I used to fear that. Now I welcome it, because obedience is the closest thing to eternity. The chaplain summoned me today. His armor was darker than I remembered, his skull helm reflecting the firelight of votive candles. Behind him stood the tech marines, silent, masked, hands gloved in sacred oil. "Brother Sergeant Oven," the chaplain said, his voice solemn and reverent. "The call has chosen you for the eternal choir." I knew the name. Every space marine does. It is spoken only in whispers, a fate reserved for those who have served beyond measure, whose loyalty has transcended mortality. I bowed my head. "I am honored, Father." "You will be more than honored," he said. "You will be immortal." They took me to the lower decks, places no mortal crew may tread. The air there was heavy, thick with incense and the hiss of coolant vapors. Servo skulls drifted through the corridors, their red eyes glowing like coals in a tomb. The sound of machinery deepened as we descended. Hydraulic hymns, the chanting of servitors, the clatter of tools upon metal bones. The call was deafening here, not in my ears, but in my skull, in my blood. Each heartbeat matched the hum of the ship. It was as though the vessel itself was alive with prayer. We stopped before a vast gate of iron and brass. Upon it, the sigil of the chapter had been carved in fire. The chaplain placed his hand upon the seal, whispering the words of unlocking. "The flesh is finite. The soul is service. Through service we become the Emperor's echo." The gate opened. Inside lay a hall lit by 1,000 dim lumen lamps, their glow reflected on rows of sarcophagi. The air trembled with low vibrations, not mechanical, not entirely. It was song, a deep harmonic resonance that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I realized then what the eternal choir truly was. Each sarcophagus contained a warrior, not dead, but not alive. Their bodies entombed in metal, their minds linked together by circuitry and faith. Their thoughts merged into the ship itself, amplifying the Emperor's call across the stars. They were no longer men. They were instruments of his will, singing in the void forever. The chaplain turned to me. "You will join them." I did not resist. How could I? This was the culmination of everything, the purpose for which I had been born, remade, and sent to war. The end of self. The beginning of divinity. The tech marines began their work. My armor was removed, layer by layer, until I stood bare before the sarcophagus, flesh pale, scarred, trembling. They anointed me in sacred oils, chanting binaric psalms as they inserted the neural cables into my spine. Pain lanced through me, white and pure. "The pain is prayer," one murmured. "Endure, and you will be heard." The world blurred. The last thing I saw was the chaplain's face, or rather, the death mask of his helm, lowering toward me like a benediction. Your duty is eternal, brother. You will serve until the stars go out. Then darkness. Then silence. Then awakening. I felt everything. The walls. The deck. The engines. The stars beyond the hull. I was no longer within my body. I was everywhere. My consciousness stretched through the ship like veins of light, touching every system, every machine spirit, every fellow brother entombed beside me. And through it all, the call flowed, no longer external, no longer something to obey. I was part of it. I was the voice. I spoke, though not with words. I sang. We all did. Our minds joined into one perfect harmony, not of joy, not of sorrow, but of pure, endless devotion. We sang for the Emperor, for mankind, for every world that would never know our names. We sang to hold the darkness at bay. Time lost meaning. Years, centuries, perhaps millennia passed. I watched worlds burn and be rebuilt through the eyes of ships, through the sensors of drones, through the prayers of soldiers who never knew the source of the whisper guiding them. It was us. We were the call that had once summoned me. We were the memory of his will, passed through generations of flesh and steel. I remember the moment I realized that the Emperor himself no longer needed to speak, because we did it for him. His silence was not absence. It was trust. And in that trust, I found peace deeper than any battlefield silence. Now I understand. The call was never a voice from above. It was a fire that burned within, passed from one servant to the next, sustained by obedience, fueled by sacrifice. The Emperor's will is eternal, not because he lives, but because we do not die. We endure. We serve. We sing. Even now, as I drift through the cold between stars, I feel the chorus rising, endless, unified, holy. The ship hums beneath me like a cathedral in motion. The void outside is no longer darkness, but an ocean of unseen light. And sometimes, when I listen closely, I can still hear my first heartbeat, that fragile echo of the boy I once was, and I whisper to him, do not be afraid. You are home, because the Emperor's call never ends. It only changes voices. And now, it speaks through me. End of confession.